You know the feeling. That tightness in your chest when an opportunity appears, and instead of excitement, there's a voice whispering reasons to wait. It sounds rational, even wise, but here's the truth that no one wants to say out loud. Self-sabotage doesn't show up wearing a villain's mask. It arrives dressed as prudence, speaking the language of responsibility, armed with quotes about timing and readiness. And its favorite lie, "I'll do it when I'm ready." That tomorrow never comes because the trap isn't in the waiting. It's in the belief that certainty will ever arrive before you move. Before we go deeper into this, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Why? Because breaking these patterns isn't a one-time insight. It's a practice. Every week we explore the psychology behind the obstacles that keep you stuck and the real strategies that move you forward. There's a pinned comment below with a roadmap of where we're going next. So if this resonates, make sure you're part of the journey. Now let's get back to what's keeping you paralyzed when you should be moving. Think about the last time you delayed a decision that mattered. Maybe it was a career change, a difficult conversation, starting that project you've been planning for months. On the surface, you told yourself you were being responsible, strategic. But underneath, the real question was, what if I fail? What if I'm not ready? What if I choose wrong? Self-sabotage feeds on that fear, not by making you panic, but by making you comfortable. It convinces you that waiting is safer than risking, that preparation is better than participation, that someday is wiser than today. Here's the thing. In Jungian psychology, there's a concept called the puer aeternus, the eternal child. It's the part of the psyche that refuses to commit, that stays suspended in a world of infinite potential because actual choice feels like death. And in a way it is. Every time you choose one path, 1,000 other possibilities die. That's not a bug. It's the cost of living. But the pure doesn't want to pay that cost. It wants to keep all doors open, all futures possible, all identities available. What it doesn't realize is that by refusing to choose, it's choosing stagnation. It's trading a real life for a fantasy of readiness that never materializes. Let me give you an image that will come back throughout this conversation. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a bridge suspended over a canyon. The bridge is solid, but it sways when the wind hits. You can see the other side clearly, your goal, your next chapter, the version of yourself you want to become. But your feet won't move. Why? Because you're waiting for the bridge to stop swaying. You're waiting for certainty, for guarantee, for a sign that it's safe. And while you wait, you tell yourself you're being smart. Meanwhile, others are crossing. Not because they're braver, but because they've accepted something you haven't. The bridge will always sway. That's not a flaw in the bridge. That's what bridges do. And freedom, real freedom, requires walking while it sways. The Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard saw this centuries ago. He said that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom, not the absence of options, but the weight of having them. Because freedom means no one is coming to decide for you. No cosmic authority, no perfect moment, no external permission. Just you, the choice, and the consequences. And self-sabotage hates that. It craves a world where you can feel in control without ever being responsible, where you can dream without ever risking, where potential stays pure because it's never tested. This is where self-sabotage gets clever. It doesn't tell you to stop dreaming. It encourages you to dream more, plan more, research more. Because as long as you're in motion inside your head, you can feel productive without ever producing anything. There's a dopamine hit in planning. Your brain lights up imagining success. But that same brain never distinguishes between imagined action and real action when it comes to reward. So you get the satisfaction of progress without the vulnerability of actually stepping into the arena. Kierkegaard called this the despair of possibility. It's the person who can be anything and therefore becomes nothing. It's the artist who never finishes a piece because finishing means it can be judged. It's the entrepreneur who never launches because launching means the idea can fail. It's you delaying the conversation, the move, the leap, because once you act, you're accountable. And accountability is terrifying when you've built your identity on untapped potential. But here's the shift, the reframing that changes everything. The anxiety you feel isn't a warning to stop. It's proof that you're at the threshold of something real. It's not the enemy of your growth, it's the signature of it, because you only feel that tightness, that vertigo, that whisper of fear when you're standing at the edge of the familiar, looking into the unknown. And the unknown is where all transformation lives. Let me take you back to that swaying bridge. You're still standing at the edge, and your body is screaming at you to wait for stillness. But now something shifts. You realize that the bridge isn't broken. It's designed to sway. That flexibility is what allows it to hold weight, to endure storms, to let people cross. If it were rigid, it would snap. And suddenly the fear doesn't disappear, but it stops meaning what it used to mean. The sway isn't a sign of danger. It's a sign that the bridge is working. That's what accepting anxiety does. It doesn't erase the feeling, but it strips it of its power to paralyze. You start to understand that fear is part of the package of freedom, not proof that you're on the wrong path. And once you see that, you can move. Not recklessly, but deliberately. Not because you're certain, but because you're committed. Now let's talk about the real structure of self-sabotage. It has 3 pillars, and each one is a lie disguised as wisdom. The first is, I need more time. The second is, I need more information. The third is, I need a sign. All 3 sound reasonable. And all 3 are designed to keep you exactly where you are. I need more time assumes there's a future version of you who will be braver, clearer, more ready. But that version doesn't exist. The you in 6 months will have the same fears, the same doubts, the same brain trying to protect you from risk. Time doesn't make you ready. Action does. And action always feels premature because growth only happens when you move, before you feel prepared. I need more information is even sneakier because learning feels productive. But there's a difference between learning that serves action and learning that replaces it. When you've spent months researching, reading, watching videos, taking courses, and you still haven't started, that's not diligence. That's avoidance with a diploma. Information becomes sabotage when it's used as a shield against doing. And then there's I need a sign. This one is insidious because it sounds spiritual. It makes waiting feel noble, like you're honoring some deeper timing. But what you're really doing is outsourcing responsibility. If the universe gives you a sign, then the choice isn't yours and neither is the risk. But that's not how life works. The only sign that matters is the restlessness you already feel, the discomfort that brought you to this moment, the pull towards something more. That is the sign. And if you're waiting for something bigger, you're just waiting. If this is hitting close to home, do me a favor. Hit the like button and drop a comment below with one thing you've been putting off. Not for me, but for you. Because naming it takes it out of the fog and puts it in the light. And once it's in the light, it's harder to ignore. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. We're building a community of people who are done waiting for permission to live their lives. Be part of that. Let's go back to the bridge one more time. You've realized it's supposed to sway. You've accepted that fear is part of the design, but you still haven't taken the first step. Why? Because the biggest lie self-sabotage tells you is that the step has to be big. It has to be bold. It has to be worthy of the buildup. And since you can't guarantee that, you freeze. But here's the truth, the first step doesn't have to be heroic. It just has to be irreversible. That's the key, irreversible. Because self-sabotage thrives in reversibility. As long as you can back out gracefully, you will. As long as the door stays open, you'll never walk through it. So the move isn't to make a giant leap. It's to make a small move that closes the door behind you. Send the email. Not the perfect one, the real one. The one that commits you to the meeting, the project, the change. Schedule the call. Publish the draft. Make the deposit. Do the thing that makes backing out awkward, uncomfortable, visible. Because once there's skin in the game, your brain shifts. It stops defending the fantasy and starts solving for reality. And reality, messy as it is where your actual life happens. Carl Jung had a concept called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, as opposed to who your fear wants you to be. And individuation doesn't happen in your head. It happens in the choices you make, especially the ones that scare you. Every time you choose in alignment with your deeper self, even when it's uncomfortable, you integrate another piece of your psyche. You become more whole. But every time you choose safety over truth, you fragment. You stay divided between the life you're living and the life you know you're meant for. The stakes are higher than you think. This isn't just about success or achievement. It's about whether you live as the author of your life or as a spectator. And you don't get to be neutral. Not choosing is still a choice. Delaying is still a decision, and the cost of that decision compounds every single day. not in dramatic fashion, but in the quiet erosion of possibility, the slow accumulation of bitterness, the creeping sense that you let yourself down. Kierkegaard said there are two kinds of despair: the despair of not wanting to be yourself, and the despair of wanting to be yourself, but refusing the cost. Both end in the same place: a life half lived, a self half known, a story half told. And the tragedy isn't that you tried and failed, it's that you never tried because failing felt worse than fading. So let's make this practical. Right now, I want you to identify one action you can take in the next 24 hours that is small but irreversible. It doesn't have to solve everything. It just has to move you. Maybe it's texting someone you've been avoiding. Maybe it's deleting the backup plan that's keeping you from committing to the main one. Maybe it's saying out loud to another person what you're going to do so that not doing it has social cost. Whatever it is, make it concrete. And then do this: set a failure quota. Decide right now that 30% of what you try is allowed to fail without it meaning anything about your worth. That's not lowering the bar. That's how high performers think. They know that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the tax you pay for trying. And if you're not failing regularly, you're not trying enough. Here's what happens when you accept that. The bridge stops being about perfection. It's just about crossing. And once you start crossing, you realize the other side wasn't the point. The point was becoming the kind of person who crosses. That identity shift is irreversible in the best way. Because once you know you're someone who moves despite fear, fear stops being a reason to stay still. Think about the word limit. We talk about breaking limits, surpassing limits, pushing limits. But what is a limit really? In most cases, it's not a wall. It's a threshold. It's the edge of what feels safe, what feels known, what feels like you. And self-sabotage's job is to keep you inside that threshold. Not because you can't cross it, but because crossing it changes who you are. And change, even good change, feels like loss. But here's the paradox. The only way to become more is to let go of who you've been. The only way to grow is to outgrow. And that process is uncomfortable, disorienting, sometimes lonely. People who knew the old you might not recognize the new you. Patterns that kept you safe might not serve you anymore. And that's okay. That's not failure. That's evolution. And evolution requires that you become willing to lose the old self so the new one has room to emerge. Jung called this the death of the ego, not the destruction of your identity, but the willingness to let it be transformed. And every time you step through fear into action, you're practicing that death. You're saying, I don't know who I'll be on the other side of this, but I trust the process more than I trust my comfort. If you're still watching, I know this is resonating. So here's what I want you to do. Save this video to a playlist, not just to watch again, but as a marker. A reminder that today was the day you stopped negotiating with your fear and started honoring your unrest. Because that restlessness you feel isn't a problem to solve. It's a call to answer. And the answer isn't a feeling. It's an action. Let me tell you what's waiting on the other side of self-sabotage. It's not a life without fear. It's not a life without failure. It's not even a life without doubt. What's waiting is a different kind of silence. Not the silence of avoidance, but the silence after a real choice. The kind of quiet that happens when you've done the thing, and now you get to breathe. There's no guarantee in that silence. No certainty. But there's something better: integrity. The knowledge that you showed up. That you honored the pull. That you didn't betray yourself for comfort. That silence has weight. It has substance. And once you've felt it, you realize that all the noise you were listening to before, the doubts, the excuses, the justifications, was just fear trying to keep you small. And the moment you stop listening to that noise and start listening to your own deep knowing, everything changes. So here's the final piece of the bridge. You're standing there and the bridge is swaying and your heart is pounding. And you take one step. Just one. The bridge holds. It sways, yes, but it holds. And you realize that the holding was never in question. The only question was whether you'd trust it enough to move, and that's the metaphor for everything. The bridge is your life. The sway is uncertainty, and the step is the choice to move anyway. Not because it's easy, not because it's safe, but because staying still was killing you slowly, and you finally decided that a life lived beats a life preserved. Kierkegaard wrote that purity of heart is to will one thing. Not to want everything, not to keep all options open, but to choose fully. and to live into that choice with everything you have. That's not limiting. That's liberating, because the moment you commit, energy that was scattered becomes focused. Potential that was theoretical becomes kinetic, and the life you were imagining starts becoming the life you're living. So let me ask you the question that cuts through everything. What are you more afraid of, failing today or never becoming who you know you're capable of being? Sit with that, because one of those fears keeps you safe and small, the other one calls you into your life, and only you can decide which one you're going to honor. If the answer hurts, good. Let it hurt. And then let the hurt be the fuel for the move you've been avoiding. Not tomorrow. Not when you're ready now, because now is the only time that ever actually arrives. And the version of you that you're waiting to become is on the other side of the action you're refusing to take. Here's the practice. Tonight, before you sleep, write down one sentence I stopped waiting, not as magic, not as manifestation, as a contract, a public or private declaration that the era of delay is over, that you're trading excuses for experiments, guarantees for responsibility, comfort for aliveness, and then within the next 24 hours, take the irreversible step, the one that makes backing out awkward, the one that commits you, the one that means the bridge is no longer a metaphor, it's a path you're actually walking. You'll want to retreat. Every new beginning has discomfort, but discomfort isn't a sign you're wrong. It's a sign you're growing. And growth always costs something. Let me be clear about what this isn't. This isn't about recklessness. It's not about ignoring wisdom or burning your life down on impulse. It's about recognizing the difference between true caution and fear disguised as prudence. True caution assesses risk and moves anyway. False caution collects endless information and never moves at all. One builds a life. The other curates a museum of might-have-beens. And here's the thing about might-have-beens. They haunt you in a way that actual failures never do, because failure teaches. It gives you data, resilience, stories. But regret just sits there compounding, whispering what if, feeding the bitterness that grows when you realize you were your own obstacle all along. So cross the bridge. Let it sway. Let yourself stumble. Let the first step be imperfect, because imperfect action beats perfect inaction every single time. And the people who seem fearless aren't. They're just more afraid of dying with their song still inside them than they are of hitting a wrong note. There's a line Jung wrote that I come back to constantly. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. That's it. That's the whole thing. Your past doesn't write your future. Your circumstances don't define your capacity. The only thing that determines who you become is whether you choose and keep choosing in the direction of your deepest truth. And that truth is already speaking. It's the restlessness, the dissatisfaction, the sense that you're capable of more. That's not ego, that's soul. And the soul doesn't negotiate. It just calls. And it keeps calling until you answer, or until you bury it so deep that you stop hearing it altogether. And that second option? That's the real tragedy. Before we close, I want to remind you, this isn't a solo journey. If this video gave you something, share it. Not to promote the channel, but because someone in your life is stuck in the same place you were 10 minutes ago, and this might be the nudge they need. Also, comment below with one move you're going to make. Hold yourself accountable in public. It works, and if you want to keep this work going, subscribe. Turn on notifications, because next week, we're going deeper into another layer of this. How to navigate the guilt that comes after you finally choose yourself. How to handle the people who preferred you small. How to stay committed when the initial excitement fades and the work gets hard. This is a series, not a sermon. And if you're serious about this path, you'll want to stay connected. So here's the truth you already know but needed to hear again. It's your time. Not because the stars aligned, not because you finally feel ready, but because the only time that exists is now, and the only freedom that matters is the one you use. The door to your life opens inward. No external condition is going to unlock it. The key is action. And action doesn't wait for a sign. Action is the sign. Stand up, breathe, and ask yourself one last time, which loss is greater? The loss of trying and stumbling, or the loss of never becoming the person you've always known you could be? If that question lands hard, honor it. Honor it with a choice that can't be undone. That's how limits move. Not with perfect courage, but with imperfect steps taken precisely when the body wants to freeze. The rest is myth. And myths don't save you. What saves you is the decision that cuts, the hand that reaches, the voice that finally says enough to endless delay. There's nothing left to wait for. Because what you were waiting for was this, the moment when the unrest turned into words and the words turned into movement. The bridge is swaying, and you're walking. And that right there is everything. And maybe, as you stand in that quiet aftermath, you'll notice something subtle that was missing from all those months, maybe years, of anticipation and second-guessing. There's a new kind of clarity, but it's not the clarity of knowing every answer. It's the clarity of no longer needing them. Because as soon as you act, the world responds. A path appears that theory could never reveal. Questions rearrange themselves. Priorities shift in real time. The bridge you've crossed is now behind you. And ahead, the landscape unfolds in ways you couldn't have planned. This moment, tiny and seismic all at once, is the dividing line between waiting for life and making a life. And once you've tasted it, indecision loses some of its power over you, because now you know that movement creates meaning, not the other way around. The jittery uncertainty, the sway in the bridge that you feared was not proof of inadequacy. It was proof that you were alive and growing. Every story of transformation starts with this discomfort. That's why the hero's journey always begins with refusal and restlessness. The drama isn't in the certainty. It's in the willingness to step without it. If you're looking for a way to measure progress beyond the obvious, notice how your questions change after you act. Before the first real move, your questions are, should I? And what if? But after, your questions become how? And what next? Uncertainty is never banished. It's recalibrated and made useful. The bridge didn't disappear when you crossed it, and the wind didn't stop. You just stopped waiting to feel ready. And now new options open up, each requiring further steps, more courage, more letting go. Engage here in the comments. There's power in naming your edge and describing what crossing felt like, even if it wasn't dramatic. The smallest acts leave traces. Others reading what you share might realize their bridge looks similar. That's how shared vulnerability undermines isolation. Someone else's courage serves as a mirror, reminding you that these thresholds are universal, the architecture of all meaningful change. Throughout this process, expect resistance. The patterns that kept you stuck might flare up with renewed strength, not because you did something wrong, but because you did something new. Jung called this the return of the shadow. It's the reappearance of old habits, beliefs, and fears after a breakthrough. The shadow wants to restore equilibrium, to call you back to old comfort zones. Instead of being shocked by its return, greet it as evidence that you've left the familiar behind. The best antidote isn't more analysis or repetition of positive affirmations. It's something deeply ordinary and radically effective. Consistent microactions. Each day, take one step that feels irreversible, even if minuscule. Stack these, and soon the aggregate of your choices becomes a force that's undeniable. Momentum builds. The bridge metaphor evolves. It's no longer just about crossing a gap, but about walking into new territory day by day. Let's drop into a scene. Maybe you're facing a tough conversation, a relationship transition, an overdue boundary. The impulse is to script the perfect opener, to rehearse every possibility. But courage here looks like sending a simple message. Can we talk? That micro-action dislodges the paralysis. It admits imperfection. It honors process over performance. Whoever you become through that exchange is closer to your truth than anyone you could ever be by endlessly preparing. One feature of self-sabotage is its circular logic. It tells you that now isn't the right time, but provides no criteria for when it will be. You can spend years in this loop. Your job isn't to break it with brute force, but to slip out of its grip by refusing to agree to its conditions. When the thought arises, am I ready? Replace it with, what action closes the old chapter even slightly? Do this again and again, and soon the sabotage script loses its credibility. It stops being persuasive. A side effect of movement is grief. You will grieve the identities you leave behind, the safety of prior limits, the comfort of what you once called home. Allow this, without interpretation. Grief is not weakness. It's a recalibration of allegiance. It's proof that your inner landscape is shifting. Mark the loss, honor it, and keep walking forward. The bridge, metaphorically, exists to carry you from one way of being to another. Crossing it always requires a goodbye to the old. If you need holding, reach out. Building a life that transcends sabotage isn't just personal, it's communal. Drop a comment. Respond to others. Make the invisible visible. Too often we think our struggles are unique, but the architecture of transformation is shared. When you participate, you make change possible not just for yourself, but for anyone watching quietly, still waiting for permission. And keep revisiting the metaphor. Each new challenge is another bridge. The bridge sways, the heart resists, the questions multiply. But now with experience you choose action sooner, sometimes without announcing it, sometimes with trembling certainty. Through repetition, you reshape your self-concept from the one who waits to the one who walks. Don't forget, subscribe and save this to your playlist if these reflections help you. Next week's episode will go deeper into the aftermath of growth, the guilt that can follow a leap, how to befriend your new self, and when to know it's time for another crossing. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the transitions ahead. The pinned comment below has details on upcoming topics. Here is your invitation one more time. Write the sentence, take the step, share the experience. Let each small irreversible action become the foundation of your new story. A story written by commitment, not caution. Limits dissolve when you move through them. The bridge is always swaying, but you are always capable of walking. And finally, come back to this video anytime you need to remember. Life is not waiting for you to be ready. Life is waiting for you to commit. Ready is a myth. Today is what you have. Walk the bridge. Let it sway. Become the person who chooses now, and discover that every future you wanted has been waiting for your arrival on the other side. There's an ancient image worth holding as you cross, the alchemical vessel. In medieval alchemy, transformation required heat, pressure, containment, all within a sealed chamber. The ingredients couldn't escape, couldn't dilute themselves into safety. The process was uncomfortable, often chaotic, and demanded trust in something unseen. That vessel is your commitment. Once you seal it with action, the transformation begins whether you feel it or not. You can't open the lid midway and expect the work to complete itself. You stay in the heat, you let the pressure build. And eventually, what emerges is unrecognizable from what went in. Self-sabotage wants to crack that vessel early, to relieve pressure before the change can happen. It whispers that discomfort means danger, that uncertainty means error. But discomfort is the fuel. Uncertainty is the space where the old self dissolves and the new one takes shape. If you exit too soon, you get relief but not transformation. You return to the same patterns, the same limits, the same quiet bitterness. So when the restlessness returns, when doubt creeps back in, when the bridge sways harder than expected, don't interpret that as failure. Interpret it as evidence that the process is working. The heat means the vessel is sealed. The pressure means transformation is underway. Your job isn't to make it comfortable. Your job is to stay in it long enough for the change to complete.